Welcome to this episode of B2B Marketers on a Mission, and I'm your host, Christian Klepp. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dilara Cossette. She is the founder and head of demand generation at Focus Image Pro. She has extensive experience in helping B2B marketing leaders to navigate growth. Her company does this by creating, capturing, and converting demand through demand generation strategies specifically tailored to the unique needs of small and mid-sized businesses with B2B demand generation solutions. Tune in to find out more about what this B2B marketer's mission is. Okay, fantastic. Dilara Cossette, welcome to the show. And I'm so glad to have you on here. And I also want to give a shout out to Anthony Leung for the introduction.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's dive in because we've had a couple of guests previously on the show that have talked about demand gen, but not this specific aspect. So what specific aspect am I talking about here? It's how to leverage social selling through brand ambassadorship. So why don't we kick off the conversation with this question? Why do you think the human element is often overlooked in demand gen?
I think if we look at our newsfeed on LinkedIn, on any social media, as well as if we open our inbox, we will see that we're getting tons of messages. They're coming from individuals, from companies. But when we ask ourselves, do we know those people? Do we trust them? Where they're coming from? What is the background? The answer is no. And we all know that people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. So this is where personal branding is very important, but it's so much tied with the brand ambassadorship and social selling because there should be someone behind the brand, behind every single brand, the person who will be brand ambassador or advocate of that brand, who will become a thought leader of the industry and also share the expertise. And it's not necessarily salespeople. People really think that, oh, if we're talking about brand ambassadorship or social selling, it has to be sales team. Not necessarily. I think even if it's someone outside of the sales department, it's even better because the person will sound very authentic, knowledgeable, and that will actually increase the engagement, awareness, and potentially lead to some really cool conversations that will eventually lead to closed deals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had a follow-up question there for you. If you can, is there any difference between personal brand and brand ambassadorship?
It's very similar, I would say. Personal branding is like more when it's like I would say maybe you've heard about like founder-led company, right? I feel like it's there where it's the personal branding. The person is building their brand through the thought leadership, founder-led content, I would say. This is where the person is building their brand to help the person or the company eventually to sell. Brand ambassadorship, it could be like really for a bigger organization with thousands of people, right? But it's still important to have this brand ambassadorship. It could be one person, like a dozen of people, just like doing this brand awareness. And I would say like see it as a more brand awareness, right? We think that brand awareness should come only from the company page when it's a boosted, promoted content. Not necessarily. Now on LinkedIn, you can actually post a personal post as well. That actually, it's a sign for us that, okay, this is how LinkedIn and all our social media channels, they put more emphasis on personal branding rather than company branding. And I've done several tests when we took the same content, we promoted it from company page versus the personal page, and it has 10x more engagement than the company page. So it means that people resonate, and they engage more with the personal content, which leads to the personal branding and personal, promotion as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very interesting that you mentioned that because I've noticed it as well on platforms like LinkedIn. If you look at the company pages, even if they do post content on a regular basis, you see that either their engagement is quite low, or if there is engagement, it tends to be the employees. So it's kind of like
100%. Yes.
let's pat each other on the back and internal high five. We've posted something, right? Whereas if it's from somebody's like, as you said, like personal feed, right? It's also to a certain extent a reflection of their personality, but it's also a reflection of their expertise on a specific subject, right?
100%. I would also add to that brand ambassadorship can be not necessarily from the employees of the company. Actually, it will have like even maybe 100 more results and engagement if that is something shared by customers, by other employees, by the experience. So that's where the reviews and customer support comes in place. Testimonials is now a really good example when you actually promote thought leadership content. This is where you can actually work and leverage, let's say, marketing team, sales team. They work very closely with the CS team to get those testimonials. And it's not hard to get like a few really happy customers and they would like really to advocate for your brand. Just getting a few sentences, putting a nice, really visual, and just like sharing that content. I had a call with someone earlier today. I asked the person, it was a marketing leader in a very big organization. And I asked, like, what is important to you when someone is reaching out to you? What will make you to hop on a call with someone and explore the marketing or sales opportunities? She told me testimonials. I will believe someone else about the person rather than the person, no matter what the person is saying. And that's so interesting. That's a real feedback of person who is really working with external vendors.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I had a follow-up question for you there on the topic of testimonials, because this is a challenge that I see time and time again, even with some of the customers that we are working with, right? How do you get those testimonials? How do you get buy-in from customers to give those testimonials to your company?
I think it's about the moment, right? You
Mm.
have to find the moment. It shouldn't be at the beginning of the your
No,
collaboration or
for sure.
relationship.
Yeah.
And I'll give like example, if someone is working with a marketing agency, for sure it will require minimum few months to get the results. And honestly, it doesn't mean that the results will be right away positive because we do a lot of testing and trials and A/B testing. So they might be like so not so impressive results, but you know better what you can achieve. And the moment when you get some really good results, this is the moment to ask testimonials. Another way, it's an advice for someone who is just studying and they don't have a lot of clients or they don't feel comfortable or the results are not there, is to ask, someone to give that in return to something for free. So, I've heard something recently, and I agree with that because when you start and launch your own company or any in the business, you think like, oh, my time is like, gold. But I think like you should give your time, you should offer something for free. And, it can be service, it can be free trial if you're in the product marketing, if you have a product or SaaS. If it's a service, you can offer free audit, you can offer like, free trial or something similar. And asking the person if you're satisfied, if you like it, would you mind leaving a testimonial? That is the best way to get the first testimonials, even without the strong database. And that will help actually to close the first clients. And then you can find the best moment to ask for those testimonials.
Yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point there. It's like leading by helping, right? Leading by helping. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move us on to the next question, and I'm sure you will have no problem answering this. Pitfalls to avoid, right? When it comes to social selling through brand ambassadorship.
Number one is being too pushy and too salesy. It's so interesting when I'm getting dozens of invites, connection invites every day on LinkedIn. And, in the first original message, person is saying like, oh, I'm impressed with your background and I would like to learn more. I would like to be connected. Second message, done. They're selling you something. I'm like, seriously, that's not authentic, right? Um, and I'm not saying like I'm not responding. Sometimes the offer is great and I'm always open to network, communicate, collaborate with others. I truly believe that we work and grow together because that's the only way, to help each other and make sure we achieve our own goals. But I would say like, yeah, try to be salesy, try to be pushy. I don't think, yeah, sales outreach, cold outreach, cold calling, all that stuff really worked very well 5, 10 years ago. I don't think, especially if you're targeting marketing leaders, and maybe it depends on the industry, but it doesn't work, right? We're just overwhelmed with a tons of messages every day. But what works when person is really authentic and the person really wants to connect, network, offer something without asking anything in return. And that's the best way, right? To refer clients because it's not only black and white, right? If you meet with someone, the product is not the right fit or the services is not something you're looking for right now. But there's always great to have people in your network where you can refer people, help someone else, maybe you will see a post that someone is looking for specific solutions and you can help someone. I do believe in karma. So I would say just be nice to people and treat them the way how you would like to be treated. Would you like to be solved, right away, the first message? Most probably not. So try not to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are so many examples I could give here, but there's an individual, also a B2B marketer that I've been following online on LinkedIn for many, many years. His name is Steve Watt. He's also based in Toronto. And one of the posts he put out there, in fact, I think he put it out countless times, is that people do not wake up in the morning and check their LinkedIn hoping to get pitched, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and
So
drinks their
true.
coffee and checks their phone and says, "Oh, I am looking forward to getting pitched today," right? In fact, there was another guy, and I cannot claim to have coined this phrase because other people have used it, but nobody likes to get pitch slapped, right? And that's what that is. Like, for example, case in point, we get them every day. Hi, Dilara. Your name popped up, and I was recommended to connect with you, and I'm looking forward to expand my connection. And then you accept the connection request, and then the moment you do, bam, auto pitch slap. We do whatever the service is that is actually not really relevant to your business at all. And then would you like to jump on a quick chat to talk about this? And in my opinion, it's never a quick chat, right? It's at least 30 minutes.
Yeah, there are always different tactics and methods. People are asking to get your feedback on something. People are trying to share something. They're offering like, oh, I'm working on a case study. It's like a free something. At the end of the day, people don't believe anymore. They know that it's all about the sales pitch. You know what is interesting? I was really asking someone recently to get their feedback on, the offer that we came up. And the person was like, and we were having a chat, we were asking like some specific questions and so on. It was probably the person, and it happened 3 times within a week because I was trying to get feedback from marketing leaders. 3 people asked me, Taylor, are you trying to sell me something? I'm like, nope. I was like, I was waiting for the sales speech. I'm like, no, that was a really genius question. I really wanted to get your feedback. Thank you. Have a great day. I'm like, that's it. People were really asking me, is that it? I'm like, that is it. I told you it was a real question. Thank you for getting back to me. Do you think that makes sense? Yes. Bye. And people don't believe anymore. They was like, where is the sales pitch? And they were really asking me like, is it something coming up? Are you trying to say, I don't understand the reason of this conversation. I'm like, it's just a question to get your feedback. It was so funny. 3 people. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
right? We
yeah,
overused LinkedIn
yeah,
and,
yeah,
email and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
hard.
it's probably the same reason why a lot of people don't have landlines anymore. And also why they don't pick up if they recognize, like on the call display, they see a number that they don't recognize, right? Because
Yeah.
chances are it's somebody like, you can drop any name you want of any of those big corporations here in Canada that are trying to sell you something, right? From
Mm-hmm.
telecommunications to insurance to internet and everything in between, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm going to move us on to the next question, which where I'd like you to like talk to us about the importance of having the right strategy, but also conducting the right research, right? Because social selling through brand ambassadorship is not something that, to use that North American phrase, wing it. It's not something that you should wing, right? It's something that needs to be thought out. It needs to be well researched. It needs to be intentional. But over to you, your thoughts.
I think personalization is a key. And I know like how people are like leveraging AI right now with personalization in order to send one to many messages. I mean, AI and personalization, honestly, I don't see that matching because with AI, you don't need AI to personalize the message. If you're checking someone's profile and you refer to the post that you saw, or maybe something resonates, maybe you went to the same university, you can use AI. You don't have to because that's your own personalization that you will take that example and link it, and that will be very personalized. Like the emails when they say like, oh, I noticed like someone gave you recommendation and the person mentioned this and this. So the person for sure like look into the details, right, and refer to that. There is a certain way to do AI, but now I think people are they 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 relied too much on AI and now they don't know how to do personalization and they call personalization AI, which is still not very personalized. And you can feel it right away. And there's so many copy paste messages very similar that we're getting every day. And you can feel right away if it was really written by human or by AI. But I understand also if, sales team, they have quota as well as marketing, and they need to reach hundreds of people every day because they go after volume. Definitely, there's not enough hours in a day to do all this personalization one by one. And it's hard, right? Going after volume, I think we're creating the problem for ourselves, first of all, but also for the industry. We're trying to succeed. By sending thousands of emails, someone has to send even more. So it's sometimes like people are overusing and purchasing domains, hundreds of domains in order to send more. The results are getting less, so they have to do more volume in order to it's hard, right? We're not making it easier. And if we are where we are now, what's going to happen in 5 years, right? How we will reach out, how we will talk to people, who will respond, who will believe us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, I suppose it goes back to the industry, the vertical, and also like what it is that you're trying to to sell to people, or rather, what service you plan to provide. Because, for example, like the services that you and I provide, Dilara, I would park that under consultation. It's a certain level of consultation. I would, even for myself, it would be very hard for me to close a deal for a consultation project on a cold call, an automated, like, something that's done through automation, like, an email campaign, an email blast, a blast on LinkedIn, because it's a multi, as you well know, it's a multi-stage process, right? And it's also about a lot. It's trust building, right? Because what you're selling is your expertise. It's not just necessarily your time; it's your expertise, because you're helping your customers to transform their business for the better, right? So to a certain level, that's
Yeah.
not really something that AI could solve on its own.
Yeah, I don't think so. And this is where demand gen comes in place.
Right.
And I would say like it's across all industries. I never saw any brand that demand generation or brand awareness harm that company. And this is what you can do through social selling. We can do through brand ambassadorship and social selling. And again, I don't want people to think like if there's like a selling, it means that it has to be salesy. Social selling doesn't necessarily have to be pushy or salesy. Social selling is something, there's so many methods to do that. You can share the content, you can be a thought leadership, you can share case studies, you can do whatever you want without even sales approach or asking anyone to hop on a call. That's part of the demand gen. When you do that, people, it will ring a bell or they will remember you when the need will come. So let's say they're looking for the solution, but they're not in the market right now. You create a demand. It's kind of like a 3 steps. You create a demand through brand ambassadorship, social selling, thought leadership content. You have someone on the team who is like an advocate, a true advocate, and feels comfortable to be on the video, to share the content, to share the tips, maybe weekly product newsletters, something that you share and you leverage that content. That's where you create the demand. Then it's like converting the demand. When the demand is there, this is the way to make sure they find you. This is where, some paid ads comes in place, where you can leverage some review websites, and capturing the demand, make sure you actually capture and assign it to the right sales team, and make sure you actually provide the excellent support there as well. Because if they see that you leverage and just like share so much tips and best practices at the beginning, you also want to leverage and continue the same level of support. As an example, I've been working with so many vendors. It's all great until you sign the contract. Once you sign the contract, it's not exactly what has been, promised, right? And you feel the huge difference. I think like it has to be across sales and marketing. This is where I say demand gen sits in between marketing and sales department, because it's connecting and building bridges between two departments. And one of the reasons is to make sure we provide and help prospects, eventually potential customers, with the same level of support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to the next question, and I'm sure you get this a lot, right? Because more often than not, especially in B2B, there's not many people outside the marketing function that actually understand the concept of social selling. So what's your advice to marketers out there that are dealing with internal pushback? How do you get buy-in from those that don't understand what social selling is?
So interesting. I would recommend to start maybe with internal sessions, like more educational content, and then I will make it in a very game type of contest, like maybe like incentivize or maybe like make some internal contest. Let's say, announcing the months of social selling. For sure, it has to be supported with some internal sessions, and then to provide them with maybe like support, because the biggest roadblock for people that they don't want to share, don't want to be judged, and they don't know what to say and how to say, especially when it comes to product or services. They don't want to share something that doesn't make sense and get a feedback. And that's the biggest concern. If marketing team can support with educative content by sharing what is social selling, what are the best tips, but also support them with the content creation and provide with us tools, and then create a contest or just like announce the winner or like incentivize that will be in a game, like type of environment, I would say, that will make sure like everyone, not necessarily sales and marketing, are involved in social selling. It can be customer support, it could be through different departments, and content might slightly change, but it will be something interesting to see. Let's say how many the winner is like the person who is getting the highest number of impressions or engagement, or someone who books a call. I don't know. And, this incentivize can help to increase engagement.
Yeah, something a little bit like healthy competition, if I understood you correctly, right?
Yeah. If you push too much, it won't be healthy, but yeah, it
Fair
depends.
enough.
It depends
Fair
how
enough.
competitive they are. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You mentioned something that I wanted to go back to, right? Because obviously, a lot of what you've been talking about during this conversation, when it comes to social selling, is also developing the right content. And for a lot of B2B marketers to develop that right content, they probably have to almost obviously look outside their function and lean on subject matter experts or SMEs, right? So these SMEs, I would say 9 times out of 10, are not in the marketing function. They're in different business units, and they're probably very busy people. So, what's your advice to marketers out there? How can they build those relationships and that rapport with those SMEs and get them on board with the content development?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think if content marketing falls under, like if there's someone internally, the person usually works with different departments. And one of the biggest challenge, I would say, is to come up with the brand positioning, and also like the way how the content is presented. I believe there's someone internally, the person already knows how to put the content in the way that it will sound actually authentic, and also will make sense if CS team or IT team is sharing something that are not related to their expertise. So that's something like content marketers should take in consideration while preparing the content to be shared by the different departments of the organization.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So we get to the point where I wanted to ask you to walk us through the process, right? And you've given us plenty already, but walk us through the process of leveraging social selling through brand ambassadorship. So, what are the things that B2B marketers need to do differently to achieve this? And what are the key components required for this approach?
I think the main point is to find the right person, I would say. I mentioned that sometimes people say like, oh, social selling, it has to be salesperson, it has to be founder. I would encourage actually to find someone who is first comfortable to be on the video, because I think video content is the best performing, and it's easy to connect on a personal level when you share something valuable through the video conversation. The person has to be very comfortable. The person has to have knowledge in the industry. Usually it could be someone in the product team, it could be sales, it could be customer support. I think like this is a great example where they know the brand, they know the customer, they know the market, and they the chances that they're comfortable are very high because they talk to people every single day. They're in customer support. Find the person, and it could be again through the content, create a survey who would like to become an ambassador. It could be changing if the organization is bigger than, let's say, 100 people, or there's like a more interest. It could be changed every month. For sure, it will require support from the marketing team in terms of the video editing, content creation, posting, and scheduling. But that will be the first step to do, to find the person who would like to share the content and work with that person for the social selling. What sales and marketing could do, they could leverage the content and include it in product newsletters, in sales outreach, in LinkedIn outreach. It's so easy to take that content and say like, hey, I'm just reaching out to you. It could be sales outreach, but still, I would like to share this that you might be interested in or you find insightful. So it's not a sales outreach, nothing selling, just sharing, because sharing is caring. And I think that content can be reused in so many different ways. It could be used in product email marketing, it could be used in the marketing newsletters. So it could be actually used in e-blast, sponsored e-blast, if the company is investing in external vendors and supporting. That could be interesting idea as well, just to make a series of that. Another idea I just thought about that, it's an interview series. So if that person is comfortable to do the 5 minutes interview, and if the person is actually in the CS team, that will be actually very smooth, asking clients and customers. Also, it depends on the number of customers the company is having, if they would like to interview them for like a 5 minutes. And that could be actually the series of thought leadership content.
Wow, you've given us plenty already here, but like and there's also different. You mentioned different content formats. So, in your experience of all these content formats that you've mentioned, right, for social selling, ultimately also demand gen, are there any one of these that you say would perform better than others, or would it depend on the industry, depend on what stage the company is at? What are your thoughts to that?
The shorter is better.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter the industry. I think the shorter is better. I mean, look, people don't spend hours listening to hours and hours unless it's very specific and they really want to deep dive into specific, topic or industry. Other than that, if we're talking about social selling, it has to be very short. I would say maximum 5 minutes. To be honest, if you make a series, you can talk a lot about someone very sub topic. If it's something related to one product feature or like one tactic, I think 5 minutes will be more than enough, especially if it's like not an interview series or just a video and you're sharing the best practices or tips. I believe it can be really short, but it will be very valuable. So I would say the shorter is better.
Okay. 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 You're definitely not the first one that's mentioned that, so there's definitely some truth in that. Um, could you give us an example of how social selling through brand ambassadorship helped the B2B company to generate positive results, ideally from your own experience?
We recently launched a campaign where we collected all the testimonials and put them, excuse me, in the really nice, on LinkedIn, you can do a carousel photos, images, not a PDF. It's like a one long, but they can actually scroll. We combined all that and we started boosting it. And that was very successful. We actually got a lot of engagement for that specific boosted post. What we also did, we asked the person who is doing the thought leadership content, and we agreed with the person that we're working. It's someone working in the sales, or like the person is like really overseeing marketing and sales, but he has a lot of experience. So we actually shared that content from his personal page as well, and we boosted both. And people started reaching out to the person because they see instead of the company, sometimes they don't know who to reach out to. When they see that the testimonials or like piece of content is promoted by someone, they click and they can get in touch. We got a really good prospects for one of our clients coming directly from those boosted testimonials of their clients. So it's step by step, but it's very successful.
Yeah. And I believe there's something to be said about leveraging client testimonials that way. Because, it's one thing for a company to talk about like, oh, this is, we're so great, or our products and services are so awesome. And there are some thought leadership pieces, but to have the testimonials there, which is basically um, that company's customers talking about how this provider or this company helped to make them successful, that just adds so much more substance to their claims, right?
Yeah, 100%. And, sometimes, I don't know why, but companies are hesitant to ask for testimonials. I mentioned about like the best time, and I'm not the only one saying that. Sometimes I was like, I'll wait a little bit more, I'll ask later, I'll do that. But I mean, it's never late. Sometimes, the contract ends and they don't, they actually churn and you never have a chance to ask. So in addition to just like also trying to find the best time, I think like you have to have a lot of courage and just like, let's do it. This is where the customer support can come in place. I don't know, maybe like every third month when you still kind of like you wrapped up onboarding, but you're still getting the first results. I would say, yeah, on the third or fourth month will be the best time to ask for testimonial, but it has to be kind of like documented somewhere. Okay, on 12 week or 14 week, we're asking for testimonial. At least it will be easier to compare. Are we getting positive responses or negative responses? Because if someone doesn't want to leave a testimonial, I mean, it doesn't really matter when you're asking that person. Another thing that could happen, you started working with one person, the person is leaving, and you don't know who to ask. Just one of more. So yeah, the quicker is better, but I would say not too quick enough. Depends on the industry and services or product offerings. You have to, like every company should think about their own um, timelines of asking testimonials, and then they can create a file, collect them, and say like minimum maybe three. Then they just like boost a post with three, then collect two more, just recreate that, just have five. But sometimes I was like, okay, 10 is perfect. I'll wait for 10. Just start with three. Three is better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Dilara, this is what I call the soapbox question. Okay. So, what is a status quo in your area of expertise that you passionately disagree with, and why?
I think when people say when I meet with people, especially it's like CEOs and founders, they say marketing doesn't work for us. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, well, we invested in paid ads 2000 and it didn't work. I'm like, okay, so you just put a X on marketing. Yeah, we don't believe in marketing. And I think even when people work with agencies, right? And there's so many agencies out there and they all have unique approach. If it didn't work with one or two, it doesn't mean that all agencies are bad. Or like, for example, you hire someone and the person doesn't match, or align with your values. You let that person go. You don't just like eliminate the title entirely. You still look for another person, right? The same thing with agencies or fractional folks or external vendors. If it didn't work, you know, with one or two, it doesn't mean that you should just like completely forget about that. I would say like, yeah, when I hear marketing didn't work, I'm like, you had a bad experience with marketing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work because it works for a lot of companies.
And this is I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is the reason why it's so important to, yeah, sometimes I hesitate to use this word, but to educate yourself, right? It's to also educate yourself and understand what's out there, that you have options, and so that people can also make informed decisions, right? It's absolutely right for you to say that, people, I guess as humans, we tend to say, okay, we have had one bad experience, and as a result of that bad experience, we tend to put labels, or throw people into boxes, as I like to call it. And we have this preconceived notion of certain people, certain industries, certain professions, and there's always this negative connotation or association. And I totally agree with you that we have to get out of this type of mindset, okay? That, yes, you had a bad experience, but perhaps maybe you can look back at that, and I always say do an autopsy to see what went wrong,
Yeah.
and not to play the blame game. It's to do investigation. All right, this is what happened. This is what didn't happen. This is what didn't work,
Mhm.
and this is probably the reason why. So moving forward, what can we do, or what steps or procedures or systems can we put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again? Right?
Yeah, 100%. I think like looking back is very important to analyze, okay, maybe it was not enough budget. Maybe you didn't choose the right channels. Maybe you didn't, work with the right agency, right? Or maybe you didn't hire the right fractional person. There's so many why, but I agree with you 100%. You have to look back and say, okay, it didn't work. Lessons learned. Let's move forward. But it doesn't mean that you have to say no, never again, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, and you and I both are entrepreneurs and we're business owners, and we know that that's how we grow. That's how we learn, right? It's through the mistakes that we make. Right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Every single day,
Yeah.
you make something small, but a mistake. That's for sure,
Yep.
right? Well, I always say if you don't make mistakes, and I think like it's not my expression, it's something like I've heard like for a long time ago.
Hmm.
If you don't make mistakes, it means you don't work. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's very straightforward, right?
Yep. That's definitely one way of looking at it. That's for sure. That's for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So here comes the bonus question. So, with all these conversations that we've had in the past, I did come to realize that, like me, you're also a student of languages. Let's put it that way. Yeah,
Hmm.
you speak a few languages, and you've learned a few along the way. So, if you were given the opportunity to learn another language, what language would it be and why?
I would say it would be Spanish
Okay.
because my daughter, she's going to high school and she will be learning Spanish. And my husband started learning Spanish a few years ago. But
Oh,
I think sixth language would be a little bit too much. So I'm not quite sure about that. So I'm like, I'll still give it another thought or so. But yeah, it would be Spanish.
oh, nice, nice. It is a beautiful language, and
Yes.
in this part of the world, very very useful. Right.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I also know that it's if you speak French,
Mhm.
it's also easier to learn Spanish. There's so many similarities, like a
Absolutely.
simpler version. If you know French, not other way around,
Yeah,
but yeah.
absolutely,
So it's
absolutely.
easy.
The difference, I would say, is that the speed at which the language is spoken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly, right?
fantastic. Dilara, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your expertise and experience with the listeners. Quick introduction to yourself and how people out there can get in touch with you.
Oh, I'm an open book. My LinkedIn inbox is always open. I rarely not get back to someone who's asking for help, advice, or just want to connect. I think, as I mentioned, we grow together, and I'm always happy to, share my expertise and knowledge because you never know, right, where our path will cross in future and how we can help each other because it's all about networking. So yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm an open book, always like sharing my knowledge with people.
Fantastic, fantastic. Once again, Dilara, thank you so much for your time. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having
All
me.
right, bye for now.